Hi, Deb.
Good morning, ladies.
Hi.
Where are our men this morning, huh? Did it throw you guys off that I didn't send the invite? Or do you automatically have it on your calendar?
I have it on my calendar.
Okay. I didn't know how many do that. I was so busy doing papers yesterday, 4-page paper feedback, that I didn't think about it until about 9:10, 9:15. Oh no, I better send it out just in case they need it. Hey Nolan, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good, good. Hi Emily. Four more weeks, 3 weeks after this week, we'll be out. Doesn't seem possible.
No, but I'm okay with it.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. That's right. Hey, David. We're not going to talk about effective meetings or listening today because we have people that are giving papers on that. And a little bit of stuff that was in the content is okay to know, but we're not going to dwell on that. So we're adding some people here and there. So I did want to talk about thesis statements a little bit today, so we'll get into that. Move some things around here in the course room while we're waiting. You know, I had thesis statements originally on the other schedule, and when I switched schedules, I didn't see it again. So I wanted to make sure we talked about that. So today we're going to talk about thesis statements and writing those. And then we're going to go over some, I wanted to show you a couple examples and make sure that you know, with the feedback that I've given you on your 4-page papers, I want to make sure you know how to use track changes to accept the changes as you want to. You can do them as a whole paper, or you can do them as a whole page, or you can do them as change by change. And you don't need to change things either. You can not change that and go back to the original. So I'm sure some of you were shocked when you got your papers and there was lots of red. But again, I've suggested that those are suggestions and to make you a better writer from my point of view, and give you some suggestions. And I have a bunch of tips that we're going to go over. So working toward your papers being handed in on Thursday, some last minute tips that you can use to polish your papers. Well, about 4 minutes past, so I think we'll go ahead and get started here. So this is the basics of thesis statements, is like what I wanted to bring up today. Let me get that shared on the screen. And it's just a link out there to North Carolina, University of North Carolina website that talks about thesis statements. Let me get you guys spread out here so I can see everybody. There we go. So again, thesis statements, how many of you, by a show of hands, how many of you are already familiar with thesis statements? Okay, quite a few, good, good. Well, if you're not, I know there's some instructors that it's really important to them, so I wanted to make sure that I included that. Kent Miller, is that the right name? I believe, sports management. I know Kent Miller, a friend of mine that passed away from cancer. I thought, well, maybe I'm projecting that name on him, but that is his name. This is good. So again, the thesis statement, what I really see is, I don't know why it's showing that. There it is. Let me make this bigger. I'm not sure why that is stayed on there. Well, again, when it's talking about, the best part of this website I liked is, how do you know your thesis is strong? And so, do I answer the question? You know, what is it about? What is your? And you're not proposing an argument that you're trying to persuade to, but why is your whole purpose of your paper important? Okay. And so it can be something as easy as a sentence. How and why your thesis is too open-ended. So anyway, there's some good things in here. If you have any questions, I think the thesis statement, the very first thing it says, the first and the last thing, first, I guess, the first thing there, it tells the significance of the subject matter. Why are you talking about this? Why is this important? The next one is maybe a roadmap for the paper. You're going to tell them what to expect for the rest of the paper. One thing I see in some papers is it says, I've talked about this. Well, you haven't really talked about it in the paper, because you're not literally talking. So, you know, rather than say that, I have presented, I have discussed, you know, whatever, but just a minor thing there. Usually a single sentence near the beginning of your paper, most often at the end of the first paragraph, that presents why you're writing this paper to them. So anyway, I'm sure that I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this. So any questions at all about the thesis statement and the importance of it? Just kind of gives focus, really gives some good focus to the paper. Okay, so we're going to leave that, and I'm going to go to, I have created a tip sheet here that I wanted to talk about, and it's tips, and can you guys see that, or did I lose it? You can see it. Okay, good. Let me make it a little bit bigger so we can make sure that you can see it. Okay, so let's talk about a few things, and you guys want to open up your mics, that would be great to have some participation here. But when is an apostrophe used? What is the one rule?
Possessives.
Absolutely, when it's a possessive. I'm still seeing some apostrophes here and there that when it's a plural, that they just automatically, you put an apostrophe there, okay? So the next one, how to ID the habit of run-on sentences. Do you guys have an idea of how many words is in a good sentence, is what the experts say? It's usually under 10 words. So if you have a sentence that is about 20 words long, it's probably going on, it could probably be broken into a couple of different thoughts. So something to keep in mind. And you can sure take notes about what we're talking about here, but I will post this out there also. I made notes as I was going through papers to things that people need to remember and think about when they're polishing their papers. So again, then long paragraphs. You know, I can identify long paragraphs when a whole page is a paragraph. You know, there's no breaks in the paragraph. So somehow you need to break those up I'll let you decide how to do that. And I've made notes to you to emphasize that too. Okay. So another one, going on to APA, citing of an author. Many times I've seen, let's see, Larimer stated in his article, blah, 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 that this happened. Well, that whole description of the article is not needed because it's in the references. So what that's really doing, it adds bulk to the paper itself, so you can't get into the deep content, but it's just not necessary. So I see, it seems like writers have a habit of doing that once they learn that you don't do that. You don't need to tell where this is coming from. And I think they are, the writers that do that are thinking, well, this gives them credence and credibility because they are a consultant from, Harvard Business School or something like that. So, but you don't need that because you're going to find all that information in the references. Okay. So, one of the rules of APA that lots of times is ignored is whenever the author is mentioned, no matter what their last name is, and even the article, let's say if there's no author, but you're giving the title of the article, right away, the published date needs to be right behind it, the year. And if there's no date, there's no date. But when it's missing, that's the hard part, is when it's missing. It needs to be there. So that is your red flag right away that an author is mentioned, the year has to be there. And let's say that you have a very prolific writer in your particular subject, let's say nonverbal communication, and they have several different articles, then that year helps the reader know which one you're talking about. Okay, that's the purpose of it. When you're kind of wondering why these rules are there. Okay, and whenever we have a direct quote, you need a page number or a paragraph number. And the paragraph number is, of course, on the website, wherever the URL is you're going to. It helps them. And what this is doing is helping the reader find more information. Now let's talk about the use of quote marks outside of direct quotes. I see that quite often. Probably that what people are doing is they're using it for emphasis. They want you to pay attention to what you put into quotes. Well, in APA, you can't do that. The only reason you use direct quote marks, is for direct quotes. So if you're trying to emphasize something, what you do in APA is you italicize it. And in my style of writing, before I learned APA, I would bold things that I wanted people to pay attention to. Bolding is not allowed in APA. That's a habit I needed to break. Okay. So, and so then if you do put something into quotes, the reader is going to look at what source is that from, and usually it's I can't think of an instance right now. I'm going to show you a couple examples of the feedback that I gave, and this is to a couple of papers from last semester that I have taken the names off so that the innocent can stay innocent. And so anyway, we'll go through some of that. So the format is definitely different when it's a greater than 40-word quote. Now, what is the difference? Who can tell me that?
You indent, if it's greater than 40 words, you indent the whole passage and then you cite it a little bit differently. But I'm not, without looking at it, I'm not exactly, I don't know.
Yeah, you don't use quote marks. That's the other thing. Yeah, you don't use quote marks. And you really don't, I don't know that you do cite it any differently. It's usually, the page number or whatever. I mean, if the author isn't above it, you know what I'm saying? If it's not intuitive that this is from the same source that you've been talking about the paragraph before or whatever, that's true. It's just the indentation, and it's just the trouble. This is polishing. It's just the trouble of counting the words. And you can make it double spaced or you can make it single space. I like it myself better single space, but it's accepted either way. Single space, it just kind of sets itself aside from the rest of the paper. And it's easier to read, I think, than when it's double spaced. But that's my preference. Okay, so no contractions, and that's all in formal papers. And you're going to see an example. One of the writers that I highlighted from last semester, in the first sentence, I think he had 3 contractions. You know, so it's just a rule of APA, just a rule of APA. Watch the use of slang, and thinking about the international reader. Okay, think about it from their point of view. But then if you do want to use an intentional use of slang, and that just means that there's no way, because the only way you I'm sorry, it's only that you can't say it somewhat better than the slang says it. And if you italicize it, it means that it's your intentional use of slang. And an international reader can take that phrase and put it into Google and figure out what the meaning is. Okay, so that's what the difference is. So if it's you can't think of a better way to say this, and it's powerful, that's powerful language, that's a way to do it. Okay, no bullets. I just had one student that used bullets, so I'm encouraged that not a lot of people did that. I am a big bullet user when I write papers, so I had to get away from this. And so, for example, I think he was talking about diversity and all the different factors that go into a diverse workforce. So it was gender, it was age, it was experience, work experience. It was a whole bunch of demographic things. And so I just encouraged him. I said, try, get away from the bullets, see if you can't group these together. And I said, some of the categories were personal characteristics, and then I put age, gender. I put those together, to give them an example. And then the other factors that are considered could be blah, blah, blah. And then I have it after a colon and in a list, but not by bullet, which I love bullets, but they don't like bullets. So, okay, so one thing that I see in a lot of papers is you'll be talking about something, and then the next phrase you'll say this is blah, 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 blah. And I'll say this what? And so is it this practice, this, what did I put here, this practice, this method? And a lot of sentences start with it. Name what it is. If it's discrimination, if it's, you've talked about discrimination, but the next paragraph, it does this, and it is not a good descriptor ever. So watch the is, this, it, and then somebody yesterday was using which. So anyway, make sure that you're descriptive enough. Okay, the green line. Whenever there's a green line, I'd say 80% of the time it's right that there's some kind of grammar error. And it could be a singular noun, a plural verb, it could be a bad tense, it could be a whole bunch of different things. But sometimes it is right the way it is. And so just pay attention to it. You don't really have to change. I wouldn't say that you have to change it automatically. But if you do see something and you see, I wonder if this is right, if you change it to that and it still is green, that wasn't what it was looking for. But so many times it is a simple grammatical error. Okay. But pay attention to it. Okay, if you are writing a paragraph and you're staying with the same author, I've seen several papers that have maybe had 4 cites in the same paragraph from the same author. And we're not talking direct quotes, we're just talking that you had used something of them and mixed it in with yours in the paragraph. And again, I'll see 4 different cites in that paragraph. You just need to cite at the end of the paragraph. That means this whole paragraph was from Smith, and it was a mixture of your thoughts and the authors. Okay, so it's just oversighting, and that's better than not citing. But again, you don't need to cite that much, so save yourself that problem, that effort. Now, if you do have a paragraph that has 3 different authors in it, or more than one author in it, then you do need to differentiate what came from which author. So, and again, the best papers are papers that are weaved. that have a paragraph that has 2 authors in it, has, a page maybe would have 3 different authors in it. That is great weaving in paper writing. Okay, weaving your sources in.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, please.
Okay, so if we have like a direct quote from somebody, but then
Yes.
in our paragraph, let's say it's like direct quote from this person, but it's also some of our thoughts.
Yes.
That person, we can just do the quote or the citation at the end.
The citation, if it's a direct quote, the citation always has to go right after the direct quote.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. Because it has the page number and paragraph number. Yeah.
Okay,
Paragraph
gotcha.
number. Great. Thanks for the question, Emily. Don't start your sentences with a number. I probably had 3 instances in the papers that I reviewed. And then I hope that it's making sense to you, that I'm giving you some tips on to do something or doing something or getting something. There's so much better words than those. If they're doing this, they conducted it. They doing, get, and do, those just are not powerful words. So doing what, you know what I'm saying? It just is it's much more formal if you use more formal terms, and you'll see some examples of this. Kind of funny, I just see a trend with the writers of today, the student writers of today, to talk about based off of this, blah, blah, blah. And then so I think one writer had go off about 3 or 4 times in the same paragraph, that if somebody goes off on somebody, well, that's not a formal term. So just think about how can you. I used to think, before I knew anything about writing, when I was younger and in high school, I said that I talked like a normal person, but I wrote like a professor. I had no idea that someday I would have a doctorate and be a professor, but I would, talk above, I would write above how I talked, put it that way. Reading aloud. I saw just about 2 or 3 instances of this, that if they would have read aloud, they would have seen that instead of if or instead of is, they wrote if, instead of maybe putting a last letter on a word. You know what I mean? And if you read it aloud, it's not going to make, if it's tea instead of team, it's not going to make sense. So reading aloud is powerful. That I would say, read your paper aloud. And one of the things I didn't write here is, I'll say this sounded awkward. And something, I can't remember what the term was yesterday, but somebody had 2 ly words in a row. And that doesn't make, it's an adverb describing another adverb. So that just doesn't make sense. So if you read it aloud, make sure that it's smooth. Okay. And another one is repeated phrase in close proximity. If I see something that is at the end of the sentence and it's at the start of the next sentence, I'll emphasize that, because you need to figure out how to say that differently. Okay. So let's look at those 2. I've got a couple examples here. I think I can bring them up pretty easily. We'll see how it works. And I'm not seeing it. Oh, I know it's under the folders. Let me go back to that. There we go. So here is example 1. Let's take just a minute for it to come up, I believe. Okay. You guys can see this with the track changes on it? Okay. So let's just go through these one by one. So any business, a more powerful word is every business, right? That makes sense? Every business, not just any business, every business. And then a lot is one of those vague, ambiguous number words. That what is a lot? How many is a lot? Be more specific. Can cause numerous problems. She did a good job of citing there, which I wanted to give her congratulations on that. She put a space in between the paragraphs, and that isn't necessary. She did this on her whole paper. So just gave her that tip. Indentations are 5 spaces. And to set that, you just need to go into home and paragraph, and then indentations. The left, or how about first line, it should be 0.5 inches. I guess that's what this is, but it should be 5 spaces. It should be 5 spaces. So maybe that, and what is hers? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I think she has 8. What is the 4? Anyway, that's where you set it. But maybe I need to look that up because I thought it was, I thought it had a place for 5 spaces. So let me make a note of that. Does anybody else know what they use? Because if it isn't right, I usually tell you. Okay, I'll look that up. But I know it's supposed to be 5 spaces. Okay, so good and bad are not good descriptors. Okay, so bad would be poor communication skills. Here we go. By giving direct communication, your tone may come off. May be interpreted, and again, as being persuasive, and then come off again. So you can see there's some habits here. You can see some habits. Another thing that she used a few times in this paper was okay. So this is okay because it will do 2 things at once. You know, that acceptable is a much better word. Okay, going down a little bit. Here's according to Sebastian Bailey, need the year right away. Here's an author. Okay, convey so much more in closer communication. And my question was, closer in proximity, you know, please clarify. You're standing next to someone, or, you know, what did she mean by that? And then nothing can beat, there's slang again. Nothing can be better than the intimacy. I tell people I may have my PhD, but I have pronunciation problems once in a while. I always pronounce as things are spelled if I don't have the pronunciation right. So intimacy, the accent has to be in the right place. I'm happy you're smiling and not thinking I'm terrible. So along with that, it is also, instead of harder, I would say more difficult. Does that make sense to you? Okay, more difficult to apply emphasis to what you are saying when you are not face to face. I think just kind of finishes off that sentence. Okay, next one. That can give you the face-to-face feel. I don't know if that's a very good descriptor, so I changed it to experience. And then here it's talking about Steve Grubbs likes to use the texting function. Should there be a cite there? And then at the end of the quote, I make sure she knows any quotes need the author, year, page, or paragraph number. Okay. And then it's going on to this, that another instance here is someone says something, shares that she actually conducts. You know, just more professional. Can you tell the formalization there? Just makes more sense. Okay, now we're getting down to outstanding. She has that in quotes. And I say, save quote marks for unique verbiage. Outstanding is not unique. Use italics instead. So that's emphasizing that point I talked about, is not use quote marks unless it's a direct quote. And again, it has to be, the only reason you use direct quotes is it's unique enough that you can't say it better. Okay, so if it's a word that everybody can use, that's not worthy of quote marks. Okay. Just is one of my least favorite words. Again, I think I've talked to you about this, that the only time that I can see just being relevant in a paper is when you're talking about a law that is just and fair. Just, if you leave it off, it really doesn't add anything. It doesn't add anything. So that's one of my pet peeve words, okay? So just reading through this, considering Castillo box, excellent feedback on listening and taking notes through the communication process brings me to another important aspect, and I added of communication, because that's what you're talking about, okay? Okay, so here she used okay again. So just another example of okay. No contractions. And so this one, she just, so you have that. And again, just explaining, just more clarifying the sentence there. So you have the recording to go back to. So you have that to go back to and refer to. Ultimately results to less miscommunication, in less communication. Here's a done that I changed to experienced. It's important to always try to decrease the amount of poor communication experienced. This focus will allow you to run. Okay, those make sense to you guys? Hopefully they do. Hopefully they do. We've got about 7 minutes left, and I think we can probably run through the other example and get you guys out of here early. So let me get the second example. And bring it up. I'll make it a little bit bigger so you can see it a little bit better. Okay. So this is the paper that, I guess it's the second paragraph that had 3 different contractions right in a row. Okay, so here's an example. This is all about LinkedIn. They might get told that it's very crucial that you make a profile. They might get told. I didn't even emphasize that. That may be too early in the paper, but again, they might learn that it's very crucial that you make a profile to earn a job. You know what I mean? Anyway, get is not a good word. And this next one, they also might get told that it would be very hard to look for a job they want without the social network. So anyway, moving on here. So in an article by Jan Zimmerman, and again, you wouldn't even have to say you could say it could start out with a few benefits such as recruiters and human resource professionals find on LinkedIn. Anyway, you can see it's just if you do say in an article by Jan Zimmerman, you need the year right away. But you see down there, it's if you're looking for a job, it's expected you'll be on LinkedIn. I guess, now that I look at it, that was a quote, so it's okay that he left those quote in. I didn't see that until right this moment. Okay, my bad. Okay, so anyway, going down. I don't like nowadays. Nowadays to me is not a current term. Today, jobs are going to expect you to have a LinkedIn. That makes sense to you guys too. Nowadays, I've seen nowadays in a couple other papers too. I don't think it's a formal use of what today is. This one, I took out Zimmerman said, and Zimmerman year, paragraph 4 is down below there. And here is just a missing word. I have a LinkedIn, but maybe my profile isn't the best. There's some contractions that I talked about earlier. We got them. Let's look here. This one he had those last 4 lines were all one sentence, and I broke it into 2 sentences. And again, so anyway, this one has, this is very smart to do. So, you know, to me, it just needs more descriptors, There's another get, they have access, they, who. And then this one, it was questions you could ask. So change all of these to questions. And here's an example of where he put everything. An article on the website, top resume by Kohler says, that's an example of where you don't have to have all that verbiage in there. Here's an example down here at the bottom of the page. This what? This is more and more important every year because whatever you put on the internet. And I think I stopped right there. I think I had enough of editing that student. Once in a while, I do get frustrated and just say, okay, you can see some of the tendencies you have, so try to clean those up. So any questions you guys can think of? We've got 3 minutes left here. But I think we can let you go and get out of here early today and work on whatever you need to work on for the rest of the semester in this class or other classes.
I do have one question. So like if I have information and it takes me like multiple paragraphs to get the information out, I've always been like taught that you don't need to put the citation till the end of all that information, like even if it's multiple paragraphs.
Not usually. Usually, okay. Yeah. Because I mean, my key is to, and it depends on if you're going, Ariel. If you're saying they have 5 steps to make this happen, then it's definitely connected. All of them are connected. That would be the exception. I would say that would be the exception. But if it's these are 10 steps to do this, or this is 5 factors that you know, Smith has talked about, then you know it's all going together and it's from that person.
Okay.
Say that's the exception. Okay. Any other questions, guys? Okay. Got over a minute and a half left, so we'll see you on Thursday, and we're talking about systems thinking then. And so I hope you're ready for that. To me, that's one of the most important understandings of communication within an organization, is realizing that you are part of a system. If you're in accounting, if you're in marketing, if you're in PR, whatever group you're in, you are part of that system. You're not an island by yourself. So that's what a lot of systems thinking is about. Okay? So I'm sure you won't be sad that we're giving you some extra time. Okay? Let me know if you guys have anything, okay? Any questions about anything? All right. One last thing, it's under a minute here, is Emily did ask about if there needs to be interactiveness in the presentation. You know, there probably won't be a chance for interactiveness. So that is not going to be one of the factors that the presentation is judged on. So you'll each get 10 minutes, and I'll share the screen with whoever's speaking that day. And to me, that should go pretty good, because we won't have to worry about putting flash drives in and finding it on Google or whatever. If all the presentations are up and ready, you can just share screens and go from there. Probably going to get cut off here. So you guys have a good rest of the week, and we'll see you on Thursday morning. Bye-bye.